everybody, and welcome to the Legislative Journal for August 2024 with State Representative Greg Vitale from the 166th Legislative District representing Delaware County. Rep, good to see you again.
Ben, good to see you.
All righty, so we're in the midst of the House summer recess after wrapping up in early to mid-July. Pretty long break for all the House members until September 23rd. So give us an idea of what exactly you are doing, what your fellow representatives are doing during this time away from the House floor.
Well, frankly, it's a time to catch up on some personal things, get a vacation in, do some work around the house, and re-engage in some personal friendships and so forth. But on the legislative side, it's a time to take a deeper dive into some of the issues we have or will be considering in the legislature. So we have scheduled a number of public tours in the region. The first of which coming up is a tour of a community solar facility in Pennsauken, New Jersey. Pennsylvania does not have community solar. New Jersey does. And maybe it's time to step back and talk a little bit about what community solar is and why it's important and why don't we have it yet. Community solar legislation allows smaller groups of solar arrays, smaller collections of solar PV panels to feed in to the grid. By that I mean the PJM grid, the regional power grid that provides power to all of us. It allows people who don't or can't have solar panels on their own homes because of shaded conditions, because they rent, or other reasons, to participate collectively in a joint effort where a solar developer creates this solar array and then sells subscriptions to customers. In this case, in our region, it would be PECO, so that we would be getting essentially billed by PECO and our electricity by PECO, but it will be an arrangement where we are employing and we would have a share of this community facility. Now, that's important. Why don't we have it? There's a lot of political resistance, and if I can just be frank, power companies like PECO, they simply want to sell all the electricity they can on their own. And I don't think they have been chief opponents to community solar. Community solar legislation has been introduced in Pennsylvania term after term for quite a while. This term, House Bill 1842 passed out of the Consumer Protection Committee and is now over in the Senate. That would allow community solar in Pennsylvania and would be a great step forward. Don't know what's going to happen to that bill. There is a bill in my committee that we'd be willing to trade for that community solar bill. In other words, there's a Senate bill that relates to solar decommissioning, and I've made it clear that if the Senate would pass the community solar bill, I'd be willing to move the Senate decommissioning bill. So we're waiting on that. Another tour is we are going to visit the Stroud Water Resource Center in Avondale. Pennsylvania has about 28,000 miles of waterways which are impaired in some way. A full 1/3 of Pennsylvania's waterways are unfit for drinking, swimming, fishing, or other uses like that. it might be a time, and the Stroud Water Resource Center does great work, and it would be an opportunity for our committee members to see what they do and just discuss important Pennsylvania water issues like acid mine drainage, which is leakage from former coal mines into our waters, or pollution runoff from farmland and other sources into the Chesapeake Bay, which is creating problems there. So that Stroud tour is something we are scheduling for September. The other tour is actually will probably be conducted prior to this video being aired. A tour we're working on right now is a tour of 3 Mile Island. You know, one of the things under discussion right now is restarting one of the reactor units that was shut down for economic consideration. There are 2 reactor units there. One, people will recall, had a near meltdown. That's not owned by Constellation, and it's not really under discussion for restarting. But the other unit that is owned by Constellation would be a great source of carbon-free energy. When I was in law school, I remember going and protesting at the construction of the Limerick plant because of the dangers of nuclear power and my opposition to it. But with climate change, risk considerations have changed greatly, and the risk and damage of climate change, in my view, justify incurring the other risks associated with nuclear power, like the disposal of spent fuel and the potential for an accident there. So that's something under discussion. We're also, just to give some of the younger members a mental picture, to the Department of Environmental Protection, in our first weeks back in September, late September, we're going to be visiting the offices of the Rachel Carson office building near the Capitol and getting a briefing of the various program heads and the DEP secretary as to what their functions are, what they do, and so forth. So, yeah, so we are, we're trying to stay busy, and but one thing we did that was, I think, pretty important after we broke for session was we scheduled and conducted a public hearing on one of the governor's 2 bills related to addressing climate change, the so-called press bill, which is a kind of a reformatting of the alternative energy portfolio standard, is part of the governor's efforts and our House's efforts to expand renewable energy in Pennsylvania. So we had a hearing recently on that.
Now let's go ahead and get a look at that hearing.
Today's public hearing is on House Bill 2277 by Rep. Friel-Otten, the so-called press legislation. Last Monday was the hottest day globally ever recorded, beating the record actually set the day before. Scientists tell us that possibly Monday was the warmest day in 120,000 years. Right now, about 102 large wildfires are burning nationally in this country. Hurricane Beryl became a Category 5 hurricane, doing substantial damage to the Caribbean on July 1st, the earliest ever on record. Climate change is here. It's not something theoretical. It's not something in the future. It is here. and scientists tell us we must reach carbon neutrality by mid-century to avoid its worst effects. That necessarily involves expanding renewables and other carbon-free sources of energy like nuclear. In 2002, this legislature passed the Alternative Energy Portfolio Standard Act, requiring electric distribution companies like PECO to get 8% of the power they use to distribute to customers from renewable sources by 2021. Since that time, Pennsylvania has been greatly outstripped by other states. Rep. Friel, in conjunction with the Shapiro administration, has introduced House Bill 2277, which in very broad terms requires 35% renewables by 2035. In other words, requiring electric distribution companies like PECO and PP&L and so forth to get 35% of their power they distribute to customers from renewable or Tier 1 sources. This is the second hearing we're having on this very important topic.
So, Rep, what's next for press? You had this public hearing, but there's not a lot of time given the session days, that calendar looking ahead. What does it look like?
Okay, so we had two public hearings, and we had a lot of good presenters, and people from the solar industry, the nuclear industry, and they had very specific, detailed suggestions about how that press bill could be made better. And we've been having meetings with them, and we've been, summarizing their suggestions, trying to convert it into language. And we're trying to set up a meeting with the administration, their experts who have, initially drafted this bill, with the idea of seeing which of these amendments they think is a good idea. And once we sort of establish that, we plan to list the bill, frankly, maybe the first Tuesday back, which would be September 24th. Now, we may get some pushback on that. I mean, for some reason, the administration or House Democratic leadership may have an objection to that. There may be members who may want to, in our committee, who might not want to vote on it because they don't want to take a tougher vote before the election. But we're going to do it. One thing I've learned in my brief tenure as chairman is if you want to make something happen, you just have to go out and do it and then see what the reaction is and then just deal with it. Sometimes you're stopped, sometimes you're not. But that's going to be the approach. Get this in a position where we can vote on it and just keep moving forward till we're stopped. Because the thing is, and the way I look at it, is we really only have 11 session days until the end of this term, which ends the last day in November. And any bill that is not, passed by both chambers by then is dead. You have to start from the beginning next term. So in my mind, why not give it a shot? Why not give it a shot? And that's where we are on the press bill.
And every time we bring up press, we also talk about the kind of companion program or related program, if we will, in PACER. What's going on with that?
Right. Well, that's the administration's attempt to kind of do RGGI without doing RGGI. RGGI is the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, which is a collection of, I think it's about 11 northeastern and mid-Atlantic states. And the goal is to reduce CO2 greenhouse gas production in the power sector, the generation of electricity that powers our homes. And RGGI, which Governor Wolf authorized by regulation, essentially is a cap and trade market-based program where a cap is set on the overall amount of greenhouse gas emissions that can be released by the power sector. Then this gap gradually decreases about 3% a year. And companies who want to generate power and produce greenhouse gas actually have to trade these permits to create this power with each other, and it almost creates a market for these greenhouse gas allowances. Now, RGGI was approved by regulation, but then it was attacked in the courts on the basis that it constitutes a tax and the administration is not authorized to create a tax. This was upheld in Commonwealth Court and is now being considered by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, which in all due respect seems to be taking forever to deal with this thing. Some recent actions are that a number of environmental groups have been allowed by the court to intervene in this RGGI legislation and assert the environmental amendment to the Constitution as a reason for doing this, and briefing schedules. There's multiple litigants on both sides of the issue. Briefing schedules have been established for September, so briefs need to be submitted. There's going to be oral arguments, and then more time for a decision. Now, getting back to PACER. PACER is legislation the administration prepared to deal with some of the objections to RGGI. You know, the Republicans said, well, it's, you know, since it's multi-state, Pennsylvania loses control, and it's going to raise electricity bills and things like that. So this PACER is RGGI-like, but it is simply a Pennsylvania-only marketplace, and a substantial amount of the proceeds, more than 70% of the proceeds of these auctions for these permits to produce CO2 are driven back into lowering consumer electricity bills. So it's an effort to deal with the objections. That bill is in the House Consumer Protection Committee. It hasn't moved yet, but it's we're hopeful. We're hopeful that something will be done. I mean, frankly, I'm hopeful that the court decides in favor of RGGI, that it is in fact constitutional, and then that Governor Shapiro moves forward with RGGI. Honestly, you know, I don't think you're getting PACER through the Pennsylvania Senate, given its current composition.
And getting back into legislation, I understand that you have some other fall legislation that you want to try and get through in those 11 session days that we mentioned earlier, one of which dealing with cryptocurrency, which is a topic we kind of touched on before. So kind of give us an update on where that is and what that's all about.
Right. So why is cryptocurrency an environmental issue? The quote unquote mining of cryptocurrency, it's kind of deceptive because there's no actual mining as if it's a coal mine, but it's more a verification process where enormous computing power is used to obtain these units of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin or whatever. And you know, the electricity used in this production is just alarmingly high. Like, I think higher than the whole electricity usage of some countries. Cryptocurrency has been attracted to Pennsylvania for multiple reasons. We have very favorable tax considerations. We have supplies of the power needed to create them. So a lot of cryptocurrency operations have been coming to Pennsylvania. Recently, happily, one of the two cryptocurrency bills I introduced, one that would eliminate the sales tax exemption on the purchase of data center equipment used for cryptocurrency operations, that actually was signed into law. It was inserted into the tax code and signed into law. There's a second bill that requires cryptocurrency mining operators to register, just so the state knows their whereabouts, where they are, what they're doing, how they're doing it, the power they're using, and other things like that. And also requires a impact statement by the Department of Environmental Protection. Now, initially, this bill also had a moratorium component to it. We modeled it after New York State's legislation, which had a 2-year moratorium, but we ran into resistance. Labor opposed it, other groups opposed it, and we simply couldn't get the votes to get it out of committee. So we had to take the moratorium component out of it to move it out of committee. Now that subsequently passed the House and is moved over to the Senate. So, I mean, one of the challenges between now and the end of November is to see if some sort of deal can be worked out with the Senate to pass that bill and get that bill signed into law.
And you kind of touched on that a little bit. With this upcoming election, is that going to throw a wrench into the legislative plans? Do you see this maybe becoming part of like maybe a package deal, kind of similar to what we saw with the budget? What's your kind of forecast with these sessions coming up in a very crucial election year?
Right. So I would say that there is a reluctance generally to vote on controversial stuff prior to the election. I think members just simply don't want to do anything that's going to cause constituents to vote against them in the upcoming election. And every House member all 203 of us are up for re-election, and half the senators are up for election. So there is this reluctance. Now, with regard to this particular bill, it's honestly not the most controversial bill in the world. So I'm thinking that maybe that would not be the case there. But yeah, the question is what would be expected in exchange for that. You know, we passed the Solar for Schools bill, which provided $25 million for schools in Pennsylvania, but we had to trade a bill that imposed a $200 rising to $250 fee on EV vehicles. So you had one environmental win in exchange for one environmental loss. So the question is, what price needs to be exacted for that? We have a very tight majority, a one-person majority in the House, and so the upcoming election is very important to us. As we were discussing earlier, one of our Democratic House members, Mike Sturla, who is parenthetically only one of two other House members who has more seniority than me, is stepping down and withdrawing from his race. So a replacement for Mike, I believe, has been found. I'm not sure if the name is public yet, and will be running in his stead. But it's my understanding that that seat in Lancaster County is a fairly safe Democratic seat at this point. So holding it might not be a problem. I mean, there's a lot of other swing seats and which could go either way. Could swing Dem seats, that could swing Republican seats that could swing Dem. So it's going to be tight. It's definitely going to be tight. Yeah.
Alrighty, and folks, just a reminder, October 21st, last day to register in Pennsylvania for that upcoming election. As we're getting towards the end here, Rep, any news or updates from your satellite or district offices?
Yeah, and I will say there's a lot of important things on the ballot. You have the presidential race, which is extremely important. We have Senator Casey is up for re-election. You have the row offices, Attorney General, Auditor General, Treasurer. You have U.S. Congress. You have State Senate. Amanda Capoletti's up for re-election. Mary Gay Scalen's up for re-election, and Amanda Capoletti, or state senator's up for re-election. And then you have my House seat. So there's a lot on the ballot, and so it's important to get out and vote. Yeah, with regard to our office, we remain open in the summer. We remain happy to help people. We have a district office, which we've maintained for the last 32 years at Darby and Manoa Roads. We have pretty conventional office hours, 9 to 5, Monday through Thursday, 9 to 4:30 on Friday. And on Thursdays, we have a satellite office, which is in Marple, which is entirely handicapped accessible. And we put it there to make sure our Marple people had a convenient place to be helped. It's right on Lawrence Road. As you're going up Lawrence Road, it's at Sussex Avenue. It's right before you hit St. Pius. And we can do pretty much, and that's on Thursdays from 10 to 2. And we can do pretty much anything there that we can do in the district office. We can do the SEPTA senior ID cards. We can do notaries. We can pretty much help you in any way that we can help you in the other office. So yeah, we just welcome people to come to us. You can call in advance if you want, just to make sure that everything's in good working order. But no, it's our summer hours. We just keep working right through the summer, and we're really happy to help anyone who needs our help.
And real quick, what is the number best to reach your district office?
Yeah, so 610-789-3900, and we're at the corner of Darby and Manoa Roads in Habertown. Yeah.
All righty. Thank you all so much, Rep, and thank you all so much for tuning in to this Legislative Journal for August 2024 with State Representative Greg Vitale from the 166th Legislative District representing Delaware County.